Hello, welcome to the Empower User session brought to you by FlowForma. Today we are going to look at how to deliver complete solutions using FlowForma, a no-code BPM tool for Office 365. Before we get started, let me introduce myself. My name is Paul Stone. I'm a solution architect and a product expert in FlowForma. My background is primarily in business analysis, where I have delivered systems in a wide variety of technologies for over 20 years in small and large multinational organizations. I worked for FlowForma since its launch in 2013, and I have implemented FlowForma solutions across many business sectors and geographies. Today I hope to introduce you to FlowForma and share some of my experience in delivering FlowForma solutions. Our agenda today begins with a brief product background to describe what FlowForma is and the value that it brings to your organization. I then describe some typical business scenarios where FlowForma can be applied to successfully drive efficiency. I will follow that with a demonstration of the product that focuses on how it can provide solutions for departmental processes and external interactions, and will give some more specific examples in the areas of collaborative decisions and advanced auditing. The overall aim will be to show you how FlowForma can deliver complete solutions to simple and complex business problems using no code, empowering users to take ownership of their processes and encouraging user adoption through a simple, easy-to-use interface. We'll kick off with some background info. FlowForma was launched in 2013, initially as an on-premise solution for forms and workflow. It was migrated to the cloud and has been available from the Office 365 store since May 2015. Our primary market is now Office 365. So what exactly does it do, and how is it different from other forms and workflow products? From the very outset, FlowForma was designed as an all-in-one product. It combines forms, workflow and document generation into a single product that allows you to configure complete solutions to fully meet business requirements. It fits very well into the Office 365 platform, operating on SharePoint and integrating with other Office 365 services. The combined workflow and forms interface that FlowForma presents to end users encourages adoption within the digital workplace, while a no-code FlowForma designer tool allows non-technical users to configure and maintain workflows, essentially putting the power in the hands of the business process experts, empowering them to take ownership of the implementation of the processes. We see FlowForma as revolutionizing the BPM landscape, as it offers an alternative approach to solving business problems. Traditionally, forms, workflow and document generation were handled by separate components. You needed to integrate these components to provide complete solutions. FlowForma removes this need, as everything is done in one tool, with SharePoint providing the platform for storing all workflow content, collected data and related documents. FlowForma's all-in-one approach extends to mobile applications. FlowForma's mobile apps for iOS and Android are freely available from iTunes and the Android Play Store. The apps present FlowForma forms to mobile users without the need to configure additional mobile versions of the forms. Forms are automatically rendered appropriately for your mobile device. FlowForma's features and ease of use led it to winning the Office 365 add-in of the year at the European SharePoint Conference in 2015. By the way, we'll be at the conference again in November. Please feel free to drop by our stand for a one-on-one demonstration. FlowForma is not aligned to any specific business sector. Its versatility means that you can use it for horizontal departmental solutions, for example to enable a suite of HR processes, or apply to a specific problem in a vertical, for example a complex stage-gate product development process in the FMCG sector. When looking at the FlowForma solution domain, we tend to introduce it in terms of the complexity of the business problem and the value that FlowForma can bring as a solution. This slide shows the broad types of processes where FlowForma can be applied in an increasing order of ROI. At the lowest level are everyday processes. These are must-do processes that exist in every organization. Their scope is limited and they are often implemented through a mixture of spreadsheets or form documents embedded in email chains. For example, the new hire process. This process is often initiated by a business team lead who fills in a request to fill a vacant position. This is approved by HR, who then kick off a recruitment process. This is followed by a hiring process, where contracts are drawn up and signed. And finally, a new employee onboarding process, where the new employee requirements are passed out to facilities, IT, etc. FlowForma's value for everyday processes is that it can get these processes up and running very quickly, taking into account the nuances of the process in each organization. Departmental resources can step into the construction of the flow using standard process templates that can be adapted to fit their own unique operating environment. At the next level of ROI are dark processes. These processes are often ad hoc and not covered well or at all in the standard operating guidelines of the company. There is no clear ownership of the process as it's poorly defined, which leads to the process being very inefficient and, in the worst case, causing significant operational risk to the company. There is little or no visibility of the process, so errors are not caught and actions are not ratified. An example would be master data management, where setting up a new supplier record in your ERP system is often a major undertaking, requiring input from many resources throughout the company. And yet, if the information is incorrect, there is significant impact on day-to-day interactions with the supplier and also on the reporting of supplier transactions. A FlowForma solution can assist in this in providing a process that touches all of the right resources in the organization, gathering relevant information from those that know, validating it, and ultimately having an overall approval from the responsible person before the record is created in the ERP system. Here, FlowForma's ease of use and rapid prototyping ability encourages the users holding the business knowledge to make the dark process visible and drag it into the mainstream of operations. At the highest level are collaborative decisions. These are processes where information is collected in a variety of formats and presented in a case, which requires a group of decision makers to proceed on to the next stage. An example is innovation in product development, where a case is built for a new feature to be added to a product. The case is reviewed by a panel of judges who examine the relevance of the new feature and vote to proceed to the next stage, evaluating the feature's feasibility. The complexity of this process, which will often be very industry specific, is ideally suited to FlowForma, which can process many types of data, present it to a group for review, and act based on the results of a vote. The next part of our session today consists of a series of demonstrations. The first is an overview of the product. The second is a discussion on infrastructure and integration. The final two demonstrations cover our new collaborative decision and audit features. During each demonstration, I will discuss how FlowForma is used to solve real-world business problems. In this first demonstration, I would like to show you how FlowForma is the perfect solution for empowering departmental users to define and maintain their own processes. FlowForma's ease of use, combined with the power of a single product for a complete solution, empowers users to quickly configure a solution with minimal or no IT involvement. In our experience, the requirement for the IT department to be involved is simply down to setting up integration with existing SharePoint resources, for example the corporate intranet, or to set up integration with external systems. The generic nature of FlowForma means that it is equally applicable to the operations of any department. I will focus on HR for this demonstration, as it is an area that most people are familiar with. I will also give some brief coverage to the mobile functionality, and will talk about our InfoPath conversion accelerator, a useful tool that converts your InfoPath forms into FlowForma forms. In this demonstration, I would like to show you a process that is active in our own organization. This simple process illustrates some of the key FlowForma concepts. The purpose is not to give a thorough coverage of every feature in the product, but rather to show you how FlowForma solutions are put together. Firstly, FlowForma has two key concepts that I would like to explain. A flow is a process template. The flow consists of process steps, similar to tasks, questions for collecting data, and business rules for executing conditional actions. Flows are defined by administrators or process owners. A form is an instance of a flow. Forms are created and completed by business users involved in the process. Remember that a form in FlowForma contains all the aspects of the flow. That's steps, questions, and business rules. A key benefit of the integrated nature of FlowForma is that all activity relating to the completion of the workflow and achieving the business goal is contained within a single object, the form. The best way to understand this is to see one in action. So for my first demo, we will look at a simple leave request process. Firstly at what the business end user sees, and then we'll look at the behind the scenes view and how the flow was constructed. I can launch a form from the left hand menu, and I'm going to select the HR leave request form. The form renders on the screen and is composed of several sections. At the top of the form there's a header section that contains graphics, text and data that you wish to remain visible throughout the workflow. You can use this area for branding. The area below that is a step bar. The step bar is a visual representation of the workflow at the current time. Here we see 3 steps, with the first step highlighted. The highlighted step is the current step. So here we are on the very first step in this simple flow. The step bar is dynamic, and the steps displayed in the bar can change as the workflow progresses, and only the steps shown in the bar need to be completed. Each step is assigned to a resource, either a person or a group, and only the assigned resource can complete the step. Each step has its data associated with it, and the form area below the step bar shows the data required to complete the current step. The form area contains many questions. Questions are a term for data items. Questions can be one of many different types. For example, the employee question is a lookup question. It looks up a name in a SharePoint list. When I select a name, the system executes some business rules that display some additional questions and populates values into them based on the data that we looked up. So in addition to the step bar being dynamic, the form is also dynamic, displaying questions depending on their current context, changing as data is entered, to display information relevant to the current user right now. The range of question types supported by FlowForma is extensive, as are the range of business rules, and I will cover some of these in a moment when we look at the configuration part of the system. For now, I will complete the mandatory fields, and then I'll move to the bottom of the form, where we'll see a button to submit the information. As you can see, we're moving now onto the manager approval step, and here I can approve or reject the leave request. To review the request, I just click on the leave request step, and I see the data, which you'll notice is read-only. That's because the step is complete and several business rules may have fared altering the workflow. If you want to change the request, you have to pass back the workflow to the previous step. The system provides you with a passback button to pass the workflow back and allow the resource to go in and amend the information. The system can also use business rules to automatically pass back the workflow under certain conditions. FlowForma provides this easy-to-use form interface to end users, so that at any point in the process it is clear to the user where they are in the workflow, what has occurred previously, and what's coming up next. Now let's have a look at how this form was configured. I'm opening the leave request flow by clicking on it, which launches a tool called the Flow Designer. The Flow Designer shows a representation of the workflow as a series of steps. I can drag the steps around to alter the execution sequence, and I can add a new step to the process by simply clicking on the Add Step button. You can see here that the step details are defined in a web form. I'm just going to enter a random name in here and save the step. And you see that a new step is added to the bottom of the step list. If I want to add a question to the step, I select the step first and then click on Add Question. And I can add a single line of text question in this case, again give it a random name. Press Save. And now the question is added into the step. I'm going to add another question, and this time I'll select a different question type, a choice question type. I'll give it a random name again, and then enter some choice details. Press Save, and it adds another question to the step. You'll notice that the web form adjusted there to allow me to enter choice values. I'll add another, let's make it a date. And I can select a default value here. I'm going to default to the day and press Save. The system provides for a large variety of question types, including more complex types, for example repeating tables to record tabular information in the form. But now I'd like to show you some business rules. Business rules make everything in the form dynamic. You can use them to alter data captured in the form, alter steps in the workflow, send email communications, generate documents, and read or save information in SharePoint. If we open the first step in the workflow, we'll see all the data fields or questions included in that step. And I'm going to select the employee question. This question looked up the data in that list. If you have a look at the question definition, first of all, you'll see that it's a list lookup. And here's the list that it's looking up, and that's the column that it's looking up. I could select a different list if I wanted to. It'll show me all the lists in the site, and I can pick a different list if I wanted to, and so on. But for now, I'm happy with the definition of that. I'm not going to alter it. What I would like to do is look over to the right, where you can see that there are two business rules defined on this question. So if you remember, first of all, when we selected an employee, the system displayed a series of fields on the screen. Here, all of our business rules follow the same format. So we have a series of conditions. If the conditions are true, we execute an action. The action in this case is to show a series of questions on the screen. If I wanted to enter a condition on this rule, I just click on Enter Conditions, select say a question, and then I can check to see if the question value is equal to, let's say, Paul. Press OK, and now if that condition is true, it will execute these actions to show these questions. If I want to show another question, I simply select the question from the workflow, and then I decide to show it, enable it, disable it. And that's how I could construct this business rule. So the business rule, as you can see, is constructed using a form. There's no code involved in this. Let's look at something that's a little bit more complex. This getListData rule here pulls the information from the list that relates to the employee that I selected. So first of all, it's the same format as the previous rule, where we're entering some conditions. If the conditions are true, then you execute the action. The action is different in this case. We're getting some information from a list. Again, I can select the list I want to get the information from, and I can use a filter to pull only the employee that I'm interested in, and then I can map the list column fields onto the target questions. Again, all done using a web form. If we have a quick scan of the business rules, you'll see that there are many more business rules available. So here under workflow control, I can hide or show questions that makes the data appear or disappear. I can hide or show steps that includes or excludes steps from the workflow. I can pass back. That's automatically looping back to an earlier step. I can assign resources. I can dynamically assign resources as the workflow progresses. We also have rules for data integration. So I can push and pull information from lists. I can push and pull information from SQL store procedures. I can also push and pull information from additional forms. So I can launch a form in the system which is launching a different process. That process can even run on a different site. I can pass information to and from that process. I can set the value of questions, and I can get some user profile properties, so the current user, who's their manager, etc. Down here then we have some communications. This is an interesting part of the system where I can send emails or I can generate documents. The email rule uses a system of templates to define email content. You can include form data within the templates if you wish, and also a handy URL that will link back to the form that sent the email. Emails can be sent to users involved in the workflow or any SharePoint user, or even internet email addresses captured in questions in the form. Emails can be sent now or in the future, and cancelled if the step completes before the email is scheduled to be sent. Useful for sending people reminders to complete their work. The document generation rule also uses a system of templates. Here we use Word as a template editor. FlowForma built a plugin for Word that allows you to merge the form data into a Word document. You can see that it's straightforward to select a question and insert it into the document. So if you already have a branded Word form and you want to generate it complete with form data and email it to somebody, you can use the Word template editor to configure the format, then the generate document rule to create and populate the document, and the email rule to send it as an attachment. If we jump back to the home page, you can see that there are two web parts on the page. The one on the left shows forms created by me, so that I can see which step they are currently on and who is assigned to work on them. The one on the right shows forms already my input. These are forms where the current step is assigned to me to do. Essentially, this is my work list. At the end of the day, this is just a SharePoint site, and you can alter the pages to show different information, for example, a graphical dashboard. We do provide a dashboard out of the box. It's called the Activity Monitoring Report. This report shows the performance of the forms in the site against benchmarks. Benchmarks can be set on the flow level and also on each step. When I click on the bar in the report, I can see the forms that make up the statistic. I can also click on the historical analysis to see the individual steps and identify bottlenecks in my processes. I can then view the individual forms to investigate the cause of the bottleneck. The purpose of this quick demo was to show you that FlowForma is easy to use and that the functionality is comprehensive. So easy does not mean limited. There is sufficient functionality in out-of-the-box FlowForma to deal with almost any business scenario. I would now like to show you another more complex example. This example is a non-conformity report. It contains many more steps than a leave request. It also contains many more questions and business rules. I need to enter all the mandatory fields before I submit. When I click submit, you can see that there's a short delay. Right now the system is generating a document and sending 2 emails. When you move on to the next step, you will see that it is of a similar level of complexity to the first. Clicking back on the first step will let you see that there is an attached document. This document is incomplete, as are the remaining steps in the workflow. However, I'm showing you this as it represents a set amount of configuration time, 3 hours from scratch, and gives a good indication of how rapidly solutions can be configured in FlowForma. Once you have configured your flow, FlowForma forms are instantly available on your mobile device via an app that you can install from the Apple or Android app stores. The app works on smartphones and tablets and synchronizes with your FlowForma SharePoint site. A simple invite system operates to connect your mobile device to the site. The app then gives the user the ability to create new forms and access forms that are assigned to them. The forms render on the mobile device in a similar way to the browser view of the form, but modified slightly to account for the smaller screen format and the touch-sensitive nature of mobile device navigation. A great advantage of having an app over a browser view is that forms can be created offline. The user can then fill in the data and submit their information once connectivity is restored. This functionality is key in an increasingly mobile world and allows FlowForma solutions to be applied in remote, difficult locations, for example, deep-sea oil rigs, and also in situations where on-the-spot recording is required, for example, incident recording at a manufacturing plant. FlowForma also offers an InfoPath conversion accelerator. Many of our clients currently have a collection of InfoPath forms that often reside on their intranet and are looking for an alternative solution for electronic forms that can operate on the SharePoint platform. FlowForma have produced a conversion tool that takes an InfoPath form definition and converts it to a FlowForma form, copying across all of the data fields and optionally arranging them into workflow steps. The conversion tool may be used to convert sections of the InfoPath form into steps in a FlowForma workflow, or you could simply map all of the fields into a single step to create a flat data collection form. Using FlowForma's inbuilt workflow functionality, you can replicate a coded workflow in the InfoPath form, and you can replace coded validation functionality in InfoPath with FlowForma business rules. Once fully converted, the FlowForma version of the form typically has greater functionality than the original InfoPath form, as you can automatically use features of FlowForma, for example, the mobile accessibility. My second demonstration relates to including external resources in your workflow. This can be achieved using several methods, depending on your requirements. The first thing to consider is whether you require the external party to use anonymous access. For example, we have implemented a solution for a large sports body, where an initial application to carry out work on behalf of the sports body is sent by a member of the organization who is not an employee. The person records their internet email address on the application, and after they submit their application, it is reviewed internally. If the application is successful, then the applicant is granted access to the O365 tenant and receives an email confirmation. From that point onwards, the applicant can fully participate in workflows as if they were a regular employee. Accessing FlowForma without credentials requires you to configure a SharePoint instance with anonymous access enabled. You must do this by spinning up an Azure server, which you can do pre-configured with FlowForma from the Azure Marketplace. You may then set up a FlowForma site with a single-step form. The only purpose of the form is to collect information. Once complete, the form launches another form in the secure Office 365 FlowForma site and transfers all of the information from the anonymous site into the new Office 365 form. This form is assessed by internal staff, and if approved, then the applicant is granted access to the Office 365 tenant as an external user. There are some licensing implications for this solution. FlowForma is licensed based on the number of users accessing FlowForma functionality. Note this is not the same as the number of people with Office 365 or SharePoint site access. Any user who accesses FlowForma functionality must be a licensed user. For anonymous access, where the number of users is undefined, we charge an additional fixed fee, which is less than the regular Office 365 license fee, as typically anonymous users will use far less functionality than a full-blown workflow participant in Office 365. For my second demonstration, I would like to show you how FlowForma can capture data in one form, launch another form, and pass the data into the new form. This is key functionality for enabling external access to your FlowForma site, allowing you to set up two separate environments with different security access, while passing information between the processes running in each environment. First, let me open out a demonstration flow. This is a flow that allows an applicant to enter data. As you can see, there are a large number of questions in our first step, and critically, you can see business rules to execute when the step completes. Here you can see a send email rule that emails a confirmation to the person submitting the first step, and below it you can see a rule that adds a new form to the site, essentially kicking off a separate business process. Let's open that rule to see its construction. You can see that I have specified the site where I want to launch the new form. This is set to the current site for my demo, but you could set it to any valid FlowForma site. You then enter credentials for a user who has permission to administrate flows on the target site. This is so that the flow designer can retrieve the flow details from the target site. You can then select the flow, and the system retrieves the steps and questions. You map these questions from the source flow to the target flow. When the rule executes, it will create a new form in the target site and copy the mapped data across to the new form. For this demo, I just mapped a single question, the first name. In reality, you would map many more. Now let's take a look at the form itself. The form contains many questions, including the first name that I use for mapping. I will enter some data and move to the bottom of the form to submit. There are no mandatory fields on this form. Now we'll look at the forms list, and you can see there are two forms just created. The first one is the one that I submitted. You can see that it has moved on to the second step. The second one is the form that was created by the first. If I open that, you can see that the first name was pre-populated and that the other data was not, just as specified in the business rule. You can use this same method to set up anonymous access, where the first step of the form exists in one environment and the remainder of the process is carried out in another. An interesting solution area where FlowForma works very well is collaborative decision making. During a workflow, you may collect a large quantity of data and related documentation, which together may build a case for an action to occur. For example, in the product innovation process, typically an idea is proposed in the first step. The idea is detailed by the proposer and justification is provided for the new innovation. This is then passed on to a board for consideration and the board votes to progress or reject the idea. If successful, then the workflow moves on to the next innovation stage, assessing feasibility of the idea. This process is also known as the stage gate process and is well defined in industries where the product innovation process is critical to the ongoing operations of the business. As we have seen, FlowForma provides an excellent mechanism for collecting data on that initial idea. You can capture a large volume of data on the proposed idea, including attached documentation justifying the proposal, and submit this in the first step of your form. In addition, FlowForma can include a voting step. The voting step allows a defined group of users to each review the data in the form and vote yes or no as to whether to progress the workflow. In our example, this is the board that assesses the new innovation idea. Once all votes are cast, FlowForma displays the results and appropriate action can be taken. For example, if the overall vote was no, then the workflow can be terminated. The next demonstration shows an example of our collaborative decision functionality in action. For my third demonstration, I would like to show you a simple process that records a new innovation idea and presents it to a panel for review. Each member of the panel casts a vote on whether the idea should progress to the next stage, feasibility assessment. First, let's look at a simple form that I created. The first step captures the idea and also allows the user to upload a document to justify the idea. The second step allows the user to review the details of the idea and cast a vote. There are a few things to say about this particular step. The side panel visible to the right allows me to review related content. Here's a document that I uploaded. It also lets me look at vote history. No votes have been cast yet. And the team members. These are the voters who need to make a decision as to whether to progress or not. My user is also set up as a vote administrator so that they have access to the administration panel where they can cancel the vote or finish the vote once the minimum number of votes have been cast. Over in the main area of the form, I can cast my vote by pressing yes or no, and then enter in some rationale. I can then submit the vote, and you notice that at the bottom of the screen there is no submit button, because as a voter I don't get to submit onto the next stage until all votes have been cast and the administrator has finished the vote. However, over here I can see that I am the administrator. I now have the ability to finish the vote because the minimum number of votes have been cast. And once I finish the vote, essentially this step is submitted, and it moves on to step number 3, which displays decision results. The decision results show a graph which shows the breakdown of yeses and nos. In this case, of course, there was only one vote cast, and then the list to the right shows a list of the votes that have been cast. Now let's take a look how that simple flow was configured. The flow contains a series of steps, and in the proposal review step, you'll notice that there is a vote for idea question. The resource assigned to the voting step is the vote administrator. The voting question defines the voters who are members of a group and other options for the vote. The presence of a voting question inside a step causes the step to behave differently, as shown in the form demo. The following step contains a decision results question. The decision results question points to the original voting question, and all the data is captured on the voting question is displayed in decision results. Using this method of questions within steps, you can have multiple votes throughout your flow. FlowForma is applicable to many industries. However, some industries have regulatory requirements for the storage of electronic records that require additional abilities, which FlowForma provides using add-on packs. This demonstration covers the Advanced Auditing add-on in the scenario of the pharmaceutical sector, where the US FDA require compliance with 21 CFR Part 11, a regulation governing the storage of electronic records. Advanced Auditing provides 3 key additional functions. Firstly, you can capture electronic signatures on the completion of steps. FlowForma normally only allows assigned resources to submit and complete their steps. The system knows who you are based on your security credentials. The Advanced Auditing feature requires users to resubmit their credentials when they submit a step, and at the same time requires the user to enter the role that they are taking and the action that they are performing when submitting. For example, a particular user may complete step 1 as a submitter, and the purpose may be to supply information for review. In the same form, the same user may be assigned to review a step. When they submit the review step, they will state that their role was a reviewer and their purpose was to review the submission. Secondly, the Advanced Auditing pack stores an audit record inside the form itself. The in-form audit record allows significant audit events to be displayed easily in a human-readable audit trail. Significant events, like the application of an electronic signature, are recorded in the audit. Note that this functionality is included on top of the standard auditability, which uses the SharePoint version history to capture form changes. Thirdly, the Advanced Audit Pack includes a self-documenting feature, where a snapshot can be taken of the flow definition at a specific point in time. The snapshot produces a PDF file which contains a human-readable definition of the flow. These 3 features working together provide an easy way for external auditors to verify that a FlowForma implementation is compliant with regulatory requirements. For the Advanced Auditing functionality, I've created another simple flow that illustrates how you might record a signal in a pharmacovigilance scenario. Here I enter a description of the signal, and I can upload and attach evidence. I then press submit, and when I press submit, the system asks me for the role of the signatory and the purpose of signing. The username is the username that I'm logged in as, which I cannot change, and then I must submit a password to verify that I am indeed that user. Only then will the system allow me to submit the steps successfully. When I look in my forms list, I'll see here VBS2 is the signal that I just created, and it's currently assigned to another user, demo user 2, therefore I can't submit it any further. I can now select that form, and from the items ribbon I can look at the audit trail for that form. and the audit trail will show me when the form was created and when the form signature was checked, and the role and details that were provided when I signed and submitted the step. And here we can see the user that carried out that action. I can also look at the flow definition, PV signals, and again I can go to the ribbon menu and I can take a flow snapshot. The flow snapshot generates a document which basically provides me with a human readable view of the flow definition. Now the flow is very simple, therefore there's not a whole lot of content in this particular document, but all of the steps, questions and business rules are included in this particular document definition. I would now like to talk about a recommended delivery approach for FlowForma solutions. FlowForma is an all-in-one no-code solution delivery system. Solutions can be built and previewed in a very short space of time. It promotes a prototyping approach to solution delivery. FlowForma's Evolve approach incorporates an initial proof of concept, or POC. The main purpose of the POC is to establish the feasibility of implementing the business process in FlowForma. It also serves as the end user's first introduction to FlowForma and should demonstrate the speed of turnaround from gathering initial requirements to delivering a working prototype. A typical POC will cover the initial steps of the process. However, the entire process will be discussed during the POC workshop to identify the feasibility of implementing the process in FlowForma. In general, any process can be mapped onto FlowForma, but often this initial POC workshop identifies areas where the process itself is not well defined. The problem must be well defined so that feasibility can be properly assessed and a solution scope can be defined. If the process is well understood, then the POC can be completed and reviewed by the end users. The POC can be refined based on feedback, and several further refinement stages can occur until the final solution is delivered. The advantages of this approach is that end users are involved at every stage. With the speed of FlowForma configuration being so fast, users can feedback improvements while the last workshop is still fresh in their minds. FlowForma is an excellent tool to help tease out bottlenecks in processes and to correctly identify responsibilities for different tasks in the workflow. Any longer-term work, for example setting up integration with third-party systems, can continue in parallel with the refinement process, so that as integrations are completed, they can be introduced into the next refinement stage. FlowForma operates on an app architecture. Several interconnecting applications communicate with each other to deliver seamless functionality to the end user, appearing as one product. This slide gives a simple view of our architecture, showing that FlowForma is composed of several components that integrate to render forms, process questions, execute business rules, and generate documents. All of the components within FlowForma were built from scratch and do not depend on any SharePoint functionality to, for example, execute a workflow or render a form. SharePoint is primarily used as a data store and in our security layer. This makes FlowForma relatively independent of SharePoint, so that new SharePoint releases are easily supported. This architecture also means that FlowForma can easily be deployed on different infrastructure configurations. Essentially, the same FlowForma software operates in Office 365 as it would in an on-premise environment, which is a great benefit for hybrid environments. The ability to reach across components in hybrid environments provides great freedom in the construction of solutions that span more than one environment. Reporting from FlowForma is achieved using a data service that allows administrators to access data stored within forms. The data service is a standard OData format and they can be consumed by a number of different reporting tools. Our preferred tool is Microsoft Power BI, which offers a wealth of reporting features and can easily consume the data service and integrate additional data if required. FlowForma is designed to be extensible. New business rules and question types can be built by the client. This does require coding, but once a business rule is built, it can be used in any flow and can be selected from the business rule list in the Flow Designer. So while you might build a rule in JavaScript to call a web service in SAP, to create a new client record and exchange information with the form using our SDK, you will only have to do this once, and then the rule can be used by the FlowForma administrator without the need for technical knowledge. Integrating FlowForma with external systems can be achieved by a number of methods. Probably the easiest way is to use business connectivity services where possible. External content types can point to tables and views in SQL Server databases, and FlowForma can interact with BCS lists as you would with a normal list. If the data structure in the external environment is complex, then SQL stored procedures may be the answer. FlowForma can exchange question values with the input and output parameters of stored procedures. One of our implementations manages the creation of complex client and product records in an ERP system. BCS is used to replicate the ERP reference tables as lists in SharePoint. These lists are used to look up questions in the FlowForma form. This ensures that the data used to set up the record in the ERP system is always valid. The new record is set up using stored procedures. A large number of question values are passed into the stored procedure to create the product record, for example. The stored procedure handles the creation of the record in the ERP database across a number of tables. This solution works very well and brings a significant value to the customer, who previously had very poor control over the creation of these critical records in the ERP system. A third integration option is to use web services to exchange data. This option requires the client to build a business rule using JavaScript and use the FlowForma SDK. The JavaScript executes the web service call, and the SDK allows the JavaScript to read and write data into the form. If your third-party system supports web services, then we would recommend using this approach to interact with it. This brings me to the end of our session. I hope that you would agree that FlowForma offers a refreshing new way to construct solutions on the SharePoint platform, empowering users and encouraging adoption through its ease of use. Our website, www.flowforma.com, provides further detail on the product along with case examples. We would welcome any questions you may have on the content presented today. Please feel free to contact us at info@flowforma.com. You can also arrange a 30-day trial of the software or a one-to-one demo via our website. Thank you for attending today, and I hope that you found this session informative.